Okay, our next case is for Robert Otis, DOC number 349803. Mr. Otis, would you please state your name and DOC number for the record?
Robert Otis, 349803.
Okay, thank you. Let me explain the process to you. First, Ms. Renatz will read information into the record, and then the board will conduct an interview with you. At the appropriate time, we will allow participants who are here today to make brief statements. Today, here in support, we have Ms. Mary Otis, your mother, and here in opposition, Ms. Tracy Barbera from the East Baton Rouge District Attorney's Office. At the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand the process, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Let me fix my deal. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Renatz,
I'm gonna, yes.
this is Warden Falvey real quick. Just so you guys know, Robert has just recently discharged from our nursing unit. Although he's been working and continues to work, he went out a couple of weeks ago with change in his mental status. He subsequently was diagnosed as a bleed. He had a bleed. They clipped the bleed. He's back with us now. He's doing well. Sometimes with getting his words out, he is a little slow right now. So I just want to let you guys know I've encouraged him to take his time and answer the questions. So that would be part of the reason why moving forward. If he's not moving real quick, I've encouraged him to slow down and make sure he gets the right words out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Mr. Otis.
Yes.
Let me see if I can see. There you are. So, Mr. Otis, my name is Cheryl Renatz. I'm going to just read some information into the record, ask you to verify it, and
Yes.
then we'll start the interview process with you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So you are Robert Otis. You're classified as a first felony offender.
Yes,
You've
ma'am.
submitted an application asking for a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in the 19th JDC East Baton Rouge to life in January of 1995 for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir. So how old are you, Mr. Otis?
53.
53. Okay. And how long have you been in jail for this offense?
Since 1994, February the 2nd.
About 27 years almost.
I don't know, cause I'm messed up right now.
I understand. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened, if you can help us out, and I'll try to help you out. The deceased victim in this case was your 3-year-old stepson.
Yes, ma'am, but he called me daddy.
Was he your biological child, or he was the stepson?
No, ma'am, my stepson, but he called me dad.
Okay. And so that particular day you were in the house, you were babysitting 6 children.
Yes, ma'am.
Their ages were 9 months to 6 years old.
Yes, ma'am.
And as I mentioned, Cameron was 3 years old.
Yes, ma'am.
There's some evidence in the record also. There was another child, Gregory, who was age 4, who
Yes, ma'am.
also suffered at your hands that day, although he did not die.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us what was going on. Why did this happen?
I was smoking.
And take your time.
I was smoking crack cocaine, and I think Cameron peed on himself, and let me explain it. He peed on himself, and that's when I I I choked him, but I'm sorry for it, but that's when I choked him. 'Cause
And
he,
you were, I think you were about 27 years old at the time,
I think so too. I really,
mid-20s.
I,
Let me
yes,
have
ma'am.
it. And his mother's name was Nancy. Were
Yes,
you
ma'am.
married to his mother?
No, ma'am. We was just going together. She have a daughter for me that was born while I was in the parish.
Okay. So you were living in the household though?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were going to tell me something about your drug use?
Yes, ma'am. I was using drugs at the time, so I really don't know what or why it happened. I really don't know.
What were you using
Cocaine. I was um crack cocaine.
that day?
Yes, ma'am. Well, that week really.
Several days.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there any other, what other drugs did you use at around that time?
That was all.
So your drug of choice was crack.
Yes, ma'am.
How often did you do that?
Daily.
Daily. How old were you when you first started using any type of drug?
I think about 9 weed. I
You
think.
you started smoking weed when you were around 9 years old?
I think so.
And then when after that you progressed to, what'd you go to next?
Then I went to pills like Black Mollies and stuff. And
How old were you when you started the crack cocaine?
I don't. Oh, I remember it was 86. 86. My father had died. It was 86.
So you were in your 20s, almost 20,
Yeah, I was 19.
19. Mhm. So let's talk about what you've done about your drug use. You know, you
Well,
said you've been, you started at 9 years old and you were under the influence when this terrible, terrible event happened. What have you done to address your drug use?
well,
Abuse?
I quit doing drugs that day, but I think I still need help. I think I still need help with it. I went to what you call it here,
Living
AA,
in balance, living in balance.
and AA here too,
Uh-huh.
but I think I still need help
Are they
because
doing AA there now? Do you know?
no ma'am, I went through AA twice, but I think I still need help if I get out, because I feel like if I don't get no help, I'm gonna get back on that cocaine, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at all.
So what kind of help are you thinking you need?
What you call that? When you go to the meetings,
That's AA meetings.
yeah, I think that's what I need when if I get out. I think that's what I need.
So right now at Angola, do they do AA meetings? Do you know?
They I think they still do them. I think they still do them, but I've been there twice, so I feel like they won't let me back back there.
Right, I understand. I understand. When did you realize that you had a drug problem? The day of the day of the crime?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, when I look at your record, you got a pretty good record, it seems, of late. You began working on yourself. Looks to me like, from what the record says, in around 2005, when you took some anger management classes. We've already talked about the Living in Balance 1 and 2. You've taken Thinking for Change. Back in 2010, you took a victim awareness class. What did you learn from that class?
I I I I learned that it's the victims that's hurt and not me. If you understand what I'm saying, it's the victims that hurt and not me.
I do understand. Your conduct record is okay. You've had 29 write-ups, the last in 2013, and I think that was a low court one, the last one.
Yes,
And a
ma'am.
few months prior to that, in 2013, you had one for contraband. And was it something to do with smoking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
At the hospital.
Okay. Well,
At the
talk to
hospital.
me about your job. You work at the hospital?
No, I was working down the walk as a health care orderly. I love helping people. I don't associate with too many people, but I love helping people. I did it on the streets and I do it here. You know,
What did you do on the street?
I would them old people, I would cut their grass for them or whatever, you know, without charging them. And I just anything to help the old folks. I was doing that.
I see you have a limited duty status. I'm sure that's health related. So you don't work right now?
No, ma'am, because of the
Yeah,
bleed on my brain.
right. I noticed in the record that in the past, at least, you worked with the Point Lookout Project.
Yes, and I still do.
What do you do? Tell me
Um,
about it.
I go to the funerals at the hospital and at the Point
Cemetery.
Lookout. Yes, ma'am.
And do you help arrange those?
Well, I took the flowers to the Point Lookout
Okay.
and stuff like that. In anything they need, I used to tote the caskets and everything too.
Why do you think we ought to vote for you today?
My mother getting old, and I want to get out there and make sure my grandkids do right. That's what I really want to do. Make sure my grandkids do right. I'm the only person in my family that's locked up, and I'm only one in my immediate family that's ever been locked up. But I want to make sure my grandkids do right, and that's why, basically.
If you could speak to Cameron or Gregory today, what would you say to them?
I would say I'm sorry. It's to both of them, because both of them called me dad. I would say I'm sorry to both of them.
Okay. Let me ask Warden Falgout, is there any input from Angola?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, he has been working even with the limited duty status. He continued to work in whatever capacity he could as a healthcare orderly, and he worked up until the time here at the end of December when he had this bleeding and went to the hospital. I've been knowing him for quite a few years on the medical side as well. We've not had any issues with him. He's always been wanting to work and help take care of the patients, the elderly here on the grounds. So.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. I see Mr. Marabella has questions. Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've just got a couple of questions, Mr. Ortiz, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your substance abuse. And you said that you really think you need some help when you get out. And I think I understood what you meant. So let's just chat about that a little bit. You talked to me about your AA meetings and the things like that.
Yes, sir.
When you're talking about needing help when you get out, do you mean like going to the meetings and make sure that you got somebody to talk to all the time whenever you have a problem?
Going to the meetings and somebody to talk to.
Okay. Are you familiar with what a sponsor is in AA?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is that what you're kind of talking about? That you need to go to meetings?
And a sponsor to talk to.
Okay.
And a sponsor to talk.
Okay. Is it fair to say that when you get out, you're going to need some support? You want other people to help you stay sober. Is that fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now you weren't talking about, and maybe you were, so I'm going to ask you, are you talking about maybe going into a program like going an inpatient program, or were you talking specifically about going to meetings and having a sponsor and have someone help you whenever things get kind of rough?
Going to meetings and have sponsors, because I've been off of cocaine since '94. When I come to prison, I don't do it no more.
And it sounds like you want to stay off.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. I appreciate it. Ms. Jackson?
Mr. Ortiz, I have just a couple of questions for you, okay?
Ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did you have the brain bleed?
It was like a week ago Friday. I don't remember the day. Cause I'm kind of messed up. It was like a week ago Friday though. It was after the Friday after Christmas. That's when it was, I think, the Friday after Christmas.
Do you know what caused the brain bleed? Did they tell you?
Well, they say they think it's because of the strokes I had, but they don't know.
Okay, how many strokes have you had?
3.
When was the first time you had a stroke that you knew of?
I had 2 in 2005 and 1 in 2010.
Okay. And what kind of impairments do you suffer from because of the strokes, and how did they affect you physically?
My right leg is messed up.
Was messed up, meaning you have to fix it.
I'm gonna show you.
You have a brace.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What about your arm?
It's messed up too, but not as messed up as the leg.
Okay. So, as far as work is concerned, what are you able to do?
Well, I used to cut grass while I was on the streets, and that's what I would like to.
No, what are you able to do right now?
Cut grass. That's
I mean,
What
what are you doing at the prison right now?
oh, I'm a healthcare artist. I'm a healthcare artist, taking care of patients and stuff.
And what are you doing that right now?
Well, not now because of the brain bleed.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at. What are you able to do physically since you've had that brain bleed? Did I see somewhere that you can't pick up anything over 10 pounds?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And you walk with a limp?
Yes, ma'am.
And you have some weakness in your, is it your right arm?
Yeah, no, it's my right leg.
Okay, well, what arm gives you problems?
And my right arm too.
That's what I said. So you have some weakness in your
Yes,
right
ma'am.
arm and your left leg is
Yes, ma'am.
messed up.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, given all of those limitations, how would you be able to support yourself?
Like I say, I cut grass out there like I used to do.
What makes you think you can do that? That's what I'm trying to understand. How are you going to do that? You've got a bad leg and a bad arm. So how are you going to do that?
Miss, I know I can do that. Trust me, I know I can do that.
Well, you think you can, but you haven't done any of that since you had the brain bleed. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you really don't know what you can do right now because you
But-
haven't had a chance to
But
try to do anything.
But I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
Okay, are they doing physical therapy on you?
I just got back from the hospital. I just got back from the hospital last Wednesday. So they haven't had a chance to do it yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just to clarify, he actually, he went to UMCNO on December the 30th of 21 in the last couple of weeks. And so he came back to us here at Angola on January the 4th, and on January the 6th was discharged from the nursing unit here at the treatment center and went back to housing on Ash 3.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Warden Falgu. Ms. Renata, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So we'd like to hear from Miss Mary Otis. Good afternoon, Miss Otis.
No, they couldn't hear you, Mama. Say it again, baby.
There we go. Yes, ma'am. We'd like to hear from you.
Well, that's my baby boy. And I believe that he would do all right when he gets out. He'll be living with me. And I have to take care of him. What else you want to know?
That's it. We appreciate you speaking to us this afternoon. Thank you, ma'am.
Man, I love him very much.
Yes, ma'am. All right. At this time, we'll hear from the DA's office, Ms. Barbera.
Good afternoon again. I'll just tell you all again, I don't envy your position in these cases. I just know that many years ago, Steve Phillips and John Sinkfield negotiated a plea in a death penalty case where the agreement was Mr. Otis would plead guilty to second-degree murder and get a life sentence. I can't let go of the fact that a 3-year-old died at his hands. And then when I hear him talk about being around other children and the narcotics issues and his physical limitations, we feel like I'm in a trial. We just object for the record, but we obviously do have the utmost respect for the board's decision, and we defer to your knowledge. And I know y'all will make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, as usual. Mr. Otis, is there a statement you'd like to make to us before we vote?
Yes, ma'am. I feel sorry every day about Cameron's death. I apologize to his mother and his grandmother at the court. I apologize to my mother, and when my kids got grown, I apologize to them. And that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion for executive session.
I'll move that we go into executive session to discuss confidential matters.
I'll second that motion.
Any objection? All right, so we'll be in executive session for a few moments to discuss confidential matters. Stand by, we'll be right back.
That was a 12-minute executive session. That's one of the longer, maybe longest executive sessions that we've seen. What do you think they're going to do? We'll unpack it at the end.
All right, I think everybody's back. We'll be back in regular session. Mr. Otis,
Yes, ma'am.
a very, very difficult case.
Yes, ma'am.
Terrible crime.
Yes, ma'am.
I realized, though, in reading the record, you acknowledged immediately you turned yourself in, right?
Yes, ma'am. I had to. That's the way my parents raised me.
I understand. So you, from the very beginning, acknowledged what you did.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm concerned about your medical issues and your medical situation. I know the most recent episode is pretty serious.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm impressed with the fact that, as I had mentioned when you and I were speaking, that you started working on yourself early on. As soon, my record shows as soon as 2005. You have a good conduct record, and one of your the other victim in this case, for which you were not prosecuted, Gregory Stewart,
Yes, ma'am.
has indicated and advised us that he is unopposed to favorable consideration for you, and that speaks volumes to me. I do consider the DA's strong opposition and can appreciate it. But based on the fact that Mr. Gregory Stewart is unopposed, the remarks by Warden Falgood, my vote would be favorable for you today, and your health issues.
Yes, ma'am.
My vote would be favorable, and that would be that your sentence be commuted to 99 years and that you be afforded immediate parole eligibility.
Thank you,
That's
ma'am.
my vote. I'm one vote. It requires all of us. So, Mr. Roche?
Madam Chairman, with all factors considered, my vote is the same for the same reasons.
Mr.
Thank you.
Marabella? Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My vote likewise is the same for the same reasons.
Thank you.
And Ms. Jackson?
Mr. Nasa, can I ask Miss Mary just a couple of questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Mary, can you unmute? Can somebody unmute for Miss Mary?
I'm sorry, you guys.
That's okay. Miss Mary, I know you're not supposed to ask a lady her age, but how old are you?
80.
You're 80, all right.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you live alone right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Who takes care of you?
I do.
And
My
who's I?
daughter. Hmm. I do. I'm her daughter.
Okay, okay. So you have other children that can help you and could possibly help Otis as
Yes,
Robert
ma'am.
as well. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And his
All
children
His
also
children
are
have-
willing.
His children are willing too.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Ortiz, I'm going to vote favorably for you as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to vote to recommend commutation to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility for the same reasons as my colleagues. So
Thank you.
good luck to you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Otis, you've received a unanimous vote. We will make the
Yes, ma'am.
recommendation that your sentence be commuted to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility.
And I thank y'all.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'll tell you, the governor did not like it because the governor did not sign on the bottom line. He is still locked up. This was a commutation hearing, so the governor was going to have to sign it, and then he would have had a parole hearing afterwards. And it doesn't seem to be often that you get that to happen. But there you have it. My guess is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. I mean, who knows? With the new governor coming in, I just don't know. It's hard to imagine. But how old is he now? I think he's only. Well, anyways, what was interesting to me about this specifically was that Tracy, my favorite DA, came up to speak, and it seemed to me that she made it clear that, taking into account his physical situation and how much time he served, that she was only making a statement for the record that he not get commuted, which is quite interesting. I mean, I give her respect in the sense that she's not just doing like the DA thing where all inmates shouldn't get out. I'm not sure if I've seen her take this approach. But at the same time, man, it's hard for me to get over someone strangling a little boy and greatly harming another one, a 3-year-old stepson, because he peed himself. This was supposed to be a death sentence case, and they gave him life. It's just, when you hear about these things in the moment, one says no, you can never get out. And it's hard to understand that one day, it's like people forget. You say, well, it was such a long time ago. And I think what's interesting about seeing these cases is it just puts into perspective. When you hear about the worst of the worst, just wonder or look at these in comparison to maybe what a commutation board will say 30 years from the time of the crime that the state could have easily given him the ultimate punishment for. Like, you might say he was genuinely remorseful, the drugs made him crazy, all of these things, but I think there are certain crimes that that are just unredeemable, frankly. But it was all of them, Mr. O'Shea, Miss Jackson, I think even Tracy, but the governor, no, which is shocking because the governor, as we know, had a real penchant to commuting as many as he could. At least that was my understanding. We can jump into the next hearing, and the next hearing where there are transcripts that we can do a proper unpacking in. So let's jump. This hearing actually took place immediately after the one that we just saw, so it's following in numeric order. It's about a man who shot a bartender right between the eyes, just because it was closing time, it seems. But we will have I haven't seen this hearing yet, so let's see what happens, and we'll jump in. and I'll unpack it at the end.
Let me explain the process to you. First, Ms. Renazzo will read information into the record, then the board will conduct an interview with you. There are participants here today who would like to make statements. Let me introduce those people today. We have your attorney here, Victor Woods, and with him is Mr. and Mrs. Eddie Foreman. They will not be speaking, but they're here in support today. Also here from the East Baton Rouge District Attorney's Office, Ms. Tracy Barbera. Ms. Tracy, did you have something you wanted to add at this point?
Yes, thank you. I just want to make the record clear that after a very thorough review of the clemency investigation, we are withdrawing our objection to Mr. Foreman's request. Thank you. I'm going to continue to listen, but I don't want to speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barbera. Okay, do you understand also, sir, at the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes along with your attorney, Mr. Woods. Mr. Woods, did you want to speak after your client or prior to his brief statement?
I'm sorry, before if possible.
Okay, that will be fine. Okay, Mr. Foreman, do you understand the process, sir?
I understand.
Okay, Ms. Renata.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foreman, I'm going to read some identifying information into the record and ask you to verify that information for me. And then we'll ask Mr. Woods for his presentation. And then Mr. Roche will take over because your case has been assigned to him, okay? You ready?
Okay.
You are, okay, sir, you are Eddie Foreman Jr. You're classified as a first felony offender. You were sentenced in East Baton Rouge Parish, the 19th JDC. Originally, you were sentenced for murder in October 1969. You received the death penalty. Then you were resentenced in October 1981 to life based on the Furman v. Georgia decision. So you're currently serving a life sentence for a murder conviction. Mr. Foreman, is that information correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Woods, we'd like to hear from you, sir.
Yes, Victor Woods on behalf of Mr. Foreman, who's present with his brother and sister-in-law. We're asking for consideration from Mr. Foreman for several reasons. Mr. Foreman in this year in October will be 80 years old. He will have served over 50 years in this matter. However, we're not asking for leniency just based upon his age. We're asking it based upon his present circumstance. I'd like to take a couple minutes to inform you of what Mr. Foreman's life would be if he were to get out. First of all, his brother and his sister-in-law are here. They will assist him in transition to make sure that he has a place to live. Mr. Foreman has a place where they have 4 bedrooms where he can live with them. And Mr. Foreman also has another house where his brother can live. They also state that they will be able to assist him financially. And also they've also secured him with the ability to have a job at a local gas station that's Phillips Automotive, who suggested that he could have some work for him to do. As a result of that, he does have a place to live. Although it just does not stop there, though. He also will have individuals who help him transition into the new living environment. Mr. Foreman is heavily involved in his church. They are aware of his brother's situation, and Ms. Foreman has also informed them, and they are willing to assist and help him transition into the circumstances and things that he will be going into that were very different than when he was first incarcerated. But not only will he have assistance from his church, but he will also have assistance from an individual who was in a similar situation as he was to help him transition from jail to regular life. I've talked on multiple occasions to an individual named Archie Williams. Archie Williams wanted to participate in this particular call. However, due to me not giving him the right information, he could not ask to speak in time, but he is available if the board wanted to speak to him. Mr. Williams was incarcerated for 37 years at Angola. He knows Mr. Foreman. He's been able to transition into regular society without any problem. Mr. Williams is that individual who appeared on America's Got Talent, made it to the finals. He has spoken at the governor's spoken at the governor's breakfast. He's participated on the Steve Harvey show, and he also sung at the Apollo, many other accolades that he has. This is not about Mr. Williams, but the reason I say that is because Mr. Williams in my conversation says the reason he's where he's at now is because of Mr. Foreman's assistance. Mr. Williams stated that he did not have a father. He said, but when he got to jail, he said Mr. Foreman served as his father. And he said Mr. Foreman helped guide him. And he says he's willing to testify that part of his success today is the mentoring and the information that he received from Mr. Foreman. Now let's talk specifically about Mr. Foreman. When Mr. Foreman first got to jail, he was a man who was upset, who kind of let his environment dictate who he was. But at some point in his life, Mr. Foreman said, I have to determine who I am. And Mr. Foreman then in turn involved himself in the ministry and became a minister. And as a result of that, he ministered individuals like Mr. Williams, and he can do the same thing when he's out. All crimes are serious crimes, and this is no doubt. We're not asking this and taking what happened lightly. We're asking that he be given a chance based upon him having the ability to transition in life, that he's not a threat to anyone else, that he is offering assistance and he can take care of himself. Based upon those factors, we ask that you consider his application. Thank you, and I could answer any other questions that you may have.
All right, well, we'll turn it over to Mr. Roche at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Woods. Madam Chairman, fellow board members, before us we have Eddie Foreman Jr., DOC number 87014. He's here this afternoon seeking a commutation of sentence for the offense of murder. Back in 1966, when he committed the murder, they didn't have a classification of first degree or second degree murder. It was in the statutes just as murder. He committed the murder on July 9th, 1966, and he was arrested June 7th, 1968. Mr. Foreman is currently 79 years old, and he will be 80 years old in October of this year. He was 23 at the time he committed the offense, and he's served approximately 53 and a half years of incarceration. His victim in this crime was Joseph Guerin. Mr. Guerin was the owner and manager of the Robin Hood bar in South Baton Rouge. He's applied for a commutation of sentence in 1984, 2012, and 2014. All of those applications were denied. Mr. Foreman went to the Robin Hood bar after hours on July 9th and entered when someone left the bar, and he was having a conversation with the owner's wife when he was asked to leave. And a argument, a confrontation occurred, and when Mr. Foreman got to the door, he pulled a gun and shot Mr. Guerin in the stomach twice. To give you a chronological listing of the court proceedings, proceedings after being extradited back from Stockton, California, where he escaped after committing the offense. He was in Stockton, California for approximately 2 years, and at which time he was arrested multiple times. And the last time he was arrested, the warrant was recognized, Louisiana was notified, and he was extradited back to Louisiana and arrested on June 7th, 1968. In December of 1968, December 7th, he was found guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced on October 10th, 1969 to death by execution. On October 2nd, 1981, he was resentenced to life at hard labor without benefits, based upon Foreman versus Georgia, which said that the death penalty was unconstitutional. He was sentenced twice because the first time he was sentenced on July 2nd, 1981, he was not present for the sentencing, and it was remanded back to the judge, and 5 days later, in his presence, he was sentenced to life at hard labor. There's been multiple motions after the 1981 sentencing, and the last motion was completed April of 2014. All motions in this case were denied. He's been incarcerated at Louisiana State Penitentiary since December of 1970. He had a very hard time transitioning to incarceration. He had a total of 107 disciplinary write-ups, but I think he hasn't had a disciplinary write-up in, let's see, 1 second, disciplinary record. I think it's in the last 12 to 13 years, he's hadn't had a disciplinary write-up. His supervision record, 1 second. His supervision record is very lengthy, but the parole officer that prepared the report said that this case was so old, none of the details other than the dates that he was put on supervision, both in Louisiana and California, when the dates were not available. He had opposition from the East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney's Office, but in further review, they have stated today that they are withholding their opposition. There's no other opposition in this case. The members of the family that still exist has voiced their that they did not want to be notified any further in the proceedings of Mr. Foreman, and they had no opinion and did not comment on this case, but only stated that they would not want to be notified of any further proceedings. Mr. Foreman? Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Do you want to tell the panel about the programs that you've completed in your 53 years of incarceration?
Oh, yeah, all I have is I have 100 hours, and I have anger management and a CPR course. Now, what happened is I started on the GED, but I had trouble retaining the information that I was learning. As soon as I learned, I was losing because I wasn't using it. So I got out of the GED, but I went went through the literacy because I stopped in 7th grade. So I went through the literacy easy. But when I got to GED 1, that's where I stopped at, because after learning these things, if you don't use them, you lose.
Yeah, I noticed that you finished the literacy program and you have a medium custody level. You have a low risk assessment. Comments from the work supervisor. You don't currently have a job, but commented that you still clean the dormitory up on a regular basis.
Yeah, I work. I clean up around my area where I live at, and other places too. I
Yeah.
work.
That was his comment. You don't have an assignment, but you still do it a good job on a regular basis. The security supervisor says that you're in medium custody, you comply with all rules and regulations, and you're not a threat to security. Classification officer says very respectful and cooperative at all times. Your annual offender assessment says that you only have one violent crime. This crime, all your other crimes are minor misdemeanors and traffic violations. Is that correct?
That's correct. I had the violent crime that I had was against a guy who had killed 2 people here, and at that time, that the penitentiary was real bad, dangerous.
No, I'm talking about your arrest record, not your disciplinary record.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I can't remember. Oh yeah, I think I do.
Yeah.
Violent crime.
Yeah. You completed anger management, and I'm getting to your disciplinary record right now. And your last write-up was in September of 2012, almost 10 years ago.
That's right.
Okay. So tell this panel, Mr. Foreman, why we should vote to give you a commutation of sentence.
Well, I'm not a problem. My age is got a lot to do with that too. But one of the main reasons is because of my religious belief. I became a Jehovah's Witness, and I walk with Jehovah. So doing that, I have to comply with what he says. And so I've made straight paths for my feet based on that.
Now, Mr. Foreman, one of the main reasons that I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote later on in this hearing is you have a good transition plan. You're fortunate to have a brother who's still living and can provide a stable place for you to stay, your sister-in-law, and I was surprised to see that you had a viable employment plan at the age of 80 years old. So tell me what you're gonna do at the mechanic shop in Brule, Louisiana.
Well, I'm gonna assist the guy that own the place as much as I can. He's one of my religious brothers, and he's helping me out. So I'm gonna assist him in whatever way I can.
Are you a mechanic?
Not really, but I got some experience.
Mr. Foreman, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Madam Chairman, this completes my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Woods, is there anything you'd like to add? We don't have any other questions.
No, unless you had something for me, that's all. Thank you. Thank
No,
you for
sir.
your consideration.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Mr. Foreman, is there something you'd like to say to the board before we vote?
Well, that's, everything's pretty much said.
Warden Falco, is there anything you can add?
Not really. It's been pretty extensive going into looking at him. We were talking about the fact that he's not had any duty, and the only thing I can add is that no duty status. Nurse practitioner Park wrote a little summary that Mr. Foreman is a 79-year-old male with past medical history of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, some gastric reflux. He's got osteoarthritis of the left knee, which he had refused a knee replacement in the past. He rarely makes sick call and has a no duty status secondary to his age.
To his age. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. I think the board's prepared to vote. We'll start with Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Warden Falco,
Yes, sir.
he sounds, from your description, he sounds like a old man of 80 years old.
I told him from watching him walk in, Mr. Roche, that I'd take offense to that no duty status.
Mr. Foreman, you have done well. You had positive remarks from the warden. You have a low risk assessment. You have no disciplinary write-ups in the last 10 years. There's no victim opposition. And as of this hearing, you have no opposition from law enforcement. The length of incarceration, in 6 months, you'll be incarcerated for 54 years. Your age, and I'm pleased to see that you're still active and can get around and ready to go to work. For those reasons, my recommendation is to recommend to the governor that we commute your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My vote would be the same, commutation to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. Good luck to you, sir.
Ms.
Thank you.
Jackson? You're on mute.
I concur also. My vote is to recommend commutation to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Foreman, I agree. My vote also is the same. So on your behalf, we'll make the recommendation to Governor Edwards that your sentence be commuted to 99 years and that you become immediately parole eligible. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wood.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a few things that I want to unpack here. One is we're going to talk about the inmate. If you caught that at the beginning, how the attorney was referring to the inmate who was, I guess, vouching for him, that had been wrongfully convicted and served time with him, who was then on America's Got Talent. So I'm going to show you a clip of him, of them talking about that and him singing on America's Got Talent. I didn't know who he was, but a man who served half his life in Angola did, I thought, an incredible performance. I was just searching it. I want to play it for you. Then we'll also go over the court proceedings. It was interesting to see again Tracy not only not content, but like totally walk out of this hearing, which was just totally interesting. And again, good for her as a DA to do that. I suppose this is one of the cases that I don't oppose at all. But what I'm confused about is that in searching the records, I don't see where he had another parole hearing. I don't have it in our spreadsheet. I don't have it in the Google search. I can't imagine that in this situation, the governor does not sign to commute. I just don't get that at all. But so, Richard, if you think I'm missing something, please put it in the info and I'll pin it in the comment section, because right now I have no record that the governor signed it and that he had a parole hearing and was set free. But I don't have any record at all either. I don't have a record saying he's still in prison. I just don't have any records. And if the governor did sign it, then maybe he signed the other record that we just saw for Robert Otis, and we're just missing it. Like but let's go jump in with this. And I really hope that there's no like copyright stuff. I'll skip through it a little bit to try to avoid that. Here we go.
My name is Archie Williams.
Tuesday night, Archie Williams took the stage on NBC's America's Got Talent and made an impression no one will soon forget.
Don't let the sun go down on me.
A show-stopping moment that he never could have imagined just last year. On March 21st, 2019, Archie Williams was released from Angola prison in Louisiana, 37 years after being falsely accused and convicted of rape.
Good and sweet on me right now.
Archie was just 22 in 1983 when he was arrested and stood trial for the 1982 rape and stabbing of a white woman in her Baton Rouge home. Despite multiple alibis, fingerprints that didn't match his, and eyewitnesses saying Archie wasn't the guy, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole.
Being innocent is a thing where you never give up on yourself.
I skipped ahead again, just because of the, you want to avoid copyright things. But he basically wrote the Innocence Project, and they took up his case, and he got out. Let's go check out a little bit more.
I was just incarcerated for 37 years for somebody else's crime.
37 years of pain and suffering, and now joy in each note.
But losing everything is like the sun going down on me.
Those words that much more powerful coming from Archie.
I would never ever listen to that song in the same way ever again. One person influenced my life, and that was Oprah. And I remember her saying to me, if you're in a position to make television shows, you have the ability to change people's lives.
And because of Archie, he's become an ambassador for the Innocence Project.
We're going to do something about this together, because I believe that when enough people unite, great things happen.
They say the truth will set you free. For Archie, it's done more than that. It's given him back his life, including a daughter he didn't know he had.
To think of her going all those years without me.
And a future with new dreams.
I want to make up all the lost years. It's like the sun going down on me.
So I don't know how you feel about that. I love his rendition of that song. And I'm torn between the Innocence Project. Like, I know when I loved them and everything they stood for, but then as I started to dive into the weeds, and I think like everything else, there's good with the bad. But the moment that they took on Scott Peterson's case, I lost. It just, I guess it made me really question. And I know, and I believe that it's probably not fair. I think that there's different Innocence Project in each state, and I'm sure that they're governed differently. I actually don't know how it works. Maybe I shouldn't make assumptions, but it seems that there's a lot that is also wrong with the Innocence Project. But in this case, it is terrible when you have to think. I've heard one stat, again, don't quote me on this, but if it's like 1% of inmates that are serving crimes that they haven't committed, and that's believable. 1% margin of error is totally believable. And that's just too many. But in this sense, now this, remember, he was just a friend and supporter of him. That's why we're bringing them up. But here's the case, and this is an appeal. This is something that's, again, interesting about this case. He was given the death penalty, and this is an appeal for him for his death penalty, and he ended up winning the appeal, and they took it off the table. But can you imagine, like, again, it puts things in perspective, I think, for anyone who wants to argue against the death penalty. This is probably your poster child case. For me personally, I'm on a case by case basis on how I feel about it. I am so that's my personal take. But this one in particular is interesting, that the state actually prosecutes him. He's given the penalty. He wins on appeal. Then all these years later, he's commuted, and everyone kind of forgives him. We don't hear anything from the victim's family. The district attorney's office actually takes a step back and says, we don't oppose, and make an official statement about that. And he gets a unanimous vote. And then I'm not sure what happened with the governor, but that is pretty incredible when you want to make an argument about the death penalty. On the flip side, I can also make the argument, because we have seen when those who are sitting on death row, and then the governor tried to pass it through there where they would be only given a life sentence, being taken off of death row. And we have seen supporters say, what's the big deal? Louisiana's not going to execute them. Just take them off of death row. And those who are against that would say, no. We can't do that, because it's just one step closer to being given parole. And those who are advocating that they would be taken off of death row were ignoring these cases. They were saying it's never going to happen. It's never happened. And they're lying, because we've seen it just happen right now. So it's important to see both sides, and you can do what you want with that information. But let's go to read this. Thank you, Richard, for providing it. So here it is, where he was given a death sentence, and his appeal. To understand the context in which these bills were reserved, we recite the facts briefly as stated in the defendant's brief. The victim, in this instant act, Joseph, was the owner of and operator of the Robin Hood Bar. I like that name. Robin Hood Bar in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, at approximately 1:30 a.m. on July 9th, 1966. Think about that. The defendant was the only customer in the bar. Guerin's wife, Annie, and their employee, Henry, were also present. So it's the owner, the owner's wife, and an employee, and just him, the last patron. With the intention of closing, the owner accompanied the defendant to the front of the place of business, and just after the defendant stepped out the door, the owner escorts him out. As soon as he steps out the door, he turns around, draws his pistol from his belt, and pulled the trigger 3 times. Only 4 of the 6 chambers of the gun being filled. On the 3rd time, the gun fired. Oh, that's interesting. So the first 2 shots, the chamber, it just clicked, click, click, because it was a revolver. And there weren't bullets in all the chambers. And, oh man. On the 3rd time, the gun fired and struck him between the eyes, killing him immediately. The defendant fled the scene and was taken to New Orleans the next day by friends. Here he caught a freight train heading west. He remained at large until his arrest on June 2nd, 1968. So he was free for 2 years. Probably easier to do that back in the 60s, huh? It just seems so random, right? They're like, he had no criminal offenses. Oh, that was interesting too, when he brought up how he had a infraction for beating up someone who would kill 2 inmates in Angola. A different time back then for sure. The defendant's position is that immediately prior to the shooting, he had come to the bar and turned to leave when he realized that they were closing, but his wife called to him. But the bar owner, the victim's wife, called to him. As he was speaking to her, the owner came from behind the bar and started shouting at the defendant to leave and shoved him. While leaving, and as he moved out the door, the bar owner, the victim, grabbed the handle of his pistol in his belt. Believing that he was going to shoot him, the defendant maintains he shot in self-defense. Only following, so this is quite interesting, right? It's his words versus his word. Although you would never believe him. But it is different. It wasn't a robbery. It is a different kind of case that I guess it would come down to the story and who the jury would believe. But it is bizarre that he had no felonies prior to that and just pulled out a gun. It's just, the bill was reserved when the trial judge overruled defense's counsel motion for mistrial during the direct examination of Alois Brown by the prosecuting attorney. She testified that approximately 1/2 hour before the commission of the crime, she had been speaking with the defendant in the bar, and he told her he was going to kill Lou. Okay. Testifying also that Lou was the defendant's wife, whereupon the defendant moved for a mistrial in support of the motion. It is contended that this line of questioning was irrelevant to the prejudicial. The trial judge denied the motion, but did admonish the jury to disregard what the defendant allegedly said, other than with regard to the victim. I'm not quite sure what just happened here. I mean, he wasn't allowed to say that. Is it hearsay? Is it? I don't know. Replying upon articles, the defendant contends that those remarks were so prejudicial that mere admonishment by the court cannot erase the prejudicial impact upon the jury, and mistrial was necessary. He maintains this is especially true in the view that the fact that the district attorney encouraged these remarks by inquiring of the witness as to the identity of Lou, rather than discontinuing this prejudicial testimony. I really hope I'm saying prejudicial correctly. This bill lacks merit. Perusal of testimony of Alois Brown disclosed she testified that she was drinking at the bar when the defendant approached her for a drink, and she told him she had not bought the liquor they were drinking. The district attorney asked her, "What were you all drinking?" And this colloquy followed. A. Ambassador. Scotch. And I told him that Joe Gurin had bought it, so he didn't say any more to me about it, and so he just, stood there, and he told me, he said, "I'm going to kill Lou." It's just so random. It's like the whole, it's like, what? Who? Lou. Who is Lou? Which he called his wife, Lou. Or is it Lau? I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Her name is Louise Brown. So it's Lou? Oh, is that her nickname? I don't know. That's what he called her. I don't know. Following the defense counsel's objections to the question, the district attorney declared he thought the testimony should be admissible to show the defendant's frame of mind, but pointed out her answer wasn't responsive to my question. He then stated to the witness, "My question was, and I will repeat, what, if anything, did he say with reference to Joseph Gurin, you understand?" She then responded that he told her that he was going to kill Joe and didn't tell her why when she asked him. It's obvious that the witness' answer was not responsive to the district attorney's question, and it was not intention of the district attorney to solicit information further, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Should I go through more of this? It does make you wonder, like, really what happened. This is interesting. As evidence of hostile demonstration by the victim, counsel points to the testimony of the state's witnesses, Wallace, the arresting officer from California, and testimony of the defense witness, Melvin Dotson. Ayers testified that the defendant told him that the victim pushed him and shouted in his ear and shoved him, and that at all times the victim had a gun in his belt. Melvin Dawson, it feels like it was like the wild, wild west. Like he's got like a 6-shooter in his belt and like a tavern. It's just so random. Melvin Dotson testified upon direct examination that he was parked directly across the street from the bar at the time of the offense, and he was getting into his car when he heard a man come out of the door and say, "Don't push me anymore." And someone said, "Well," I said, "get out." He then testified he heard a shot. The defense relies upon this testimony to establish hostile demonstration and or overt acts on the part of the victim. He contends the court should have allowed the testimony as proof of the vicious character to the victim. It still wouldn't justify shooting him. I don't understand. It's like, get out of the bar. I guess they could say different intent, though. Is this a death penalty offense? You know, it could, you know, but there's no, you would never. I mean, I would argue it's not a death penalty offense quality. It's more like life in prison, second-degree murder. In sustaining the assistant district attorney's objection to defendant counsel questioning Melvin Dotson, the trial judge pointed out that the evidence before the court at the time with regards to the hostile demonstration on the part of the deceased was the self-serving statement of the accused himself to the arresting officer. The judge observed that in his statement, the defendant did not say anything about the victim attempting to use the weapon or 740 drawing the weapon. I just referenced, okay. And I'll put this link in the description. Where did they mention what the California police officer said? I'm curious about that one. And I wonder how they caught him. It's like they randomly ID'd him and or they got him on something else and then they fingerprinted him. Wait, this is interesting. There's no manifest error in the trial judge's ruling. The only evidence of hostile act by the deceased were statements by the defendant himself and the testimony of Melvin Dotson. Not only was it shown that Dotson had an extensive criminal record, his testimony was merely what he heard someone saying, "Don't push me anymore." So that witness, they're saying, wasn't reliable. And another saying, "Well, I said get out." He could not identify the parties in opposition to the evidence offered by the defendant of this supposed hostile demonstration by the deceased. The positive testimony of 2 eyewitnesses, Ms. Guerin and Smith, was received. Each testified that there was no disagreement between the deceased and the defendant at the time, and both stated that the deceased did not have a gun on his person. Thus, the observation of the trial judge is unquestionably correct. I mean, of course, with just very simple speculation, it can be easily seen that he's in the bar, they had a long day, they want him to get out. Maybe he's hitting on the bar owner's wife, and he kind of goes to shove him out, and he gets angry and shoots him. I mean, that's... The final bill was reserved during the closing argument of the district attorney when he picked up the pistol and evidence allegedly used by the defendant to commit a crime and pulled the trigger 3 times, contending this conduct was highly prejudicial. Counsel for the defendant moved for mistrial when his objection was overruled to reserve the bill in all exceptions. Why would that be a mistrial? I don't understand why it would be pulling the trigger. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I know I'm probably wasn't very helpful, but either way, how do you feel? I feel pretty bad about this guy, I don't have information on if the governor signed it and if they're free on either of these cases. So I'm sorry. I mean, it's sometimes it's possible that it just never happened. And Richard did his due diligence. It's just not there as far as I know. But if for some reason I'm missing something, I will pin it in the comment section when we're done with this. But I'm frankly, I think this is one of those cases where absolutely you should be commuted. I mean, give me one reason really why not. You say, well, he took a life, he should be, but there's no opposition. So I don't think he's a risk. Even the DA is not opposed. And with that, I'll let you go.